Your quote of "our worst deeds don't define us." Could you elaborate on that?
So the reason that I believe our worst deeds don't define us is because I believe as humans we're all capable of making poor decisions at times, mistakes often, and no one wants to be held hostage to their worst moment for the rest of their lives. And I think we owe it to ourselves to not only extend the grace of forgiveness to others, but also to learn how to forgive ourselves when we've done things that aren't favorable, because this creates a better quality of life, not only for the person, but for the community as well.
How has your personal journey shaped your view of criminal justice?
My personal journey of being incarcerated for 19 years, 7 of which was in solitary confinement, has played a major factor in the way that I see the criminal justice system in America, largely because I grew up in that environment at a very young age. I was 19 years old when I went to prison, and I saw some of the horrendous things that were happening to men on the inside, specifically those who were sentenced to adult prison as juveniles, and also those who suffered from mental illness. And I couldn't in good faith walk out of prison after having witnessed that and act as if it didn't exist. And I felt like I owed it to the men behind, some of which are my friends, and many of who were mentors to me when I was a young man coming through the prison system. And so I just think that having a personal experience fuels my passion in a way that people who haven't been in close proximity to the issue will never really fully comprehend, but hopefully they'll appreciate.
How did you survive and change throughout your experience in prison?
So oftentimes I'm asked, what was it about me that allowed me to come out of prison with my spirit intact, emotionally mature and grounded. And I was able to survive that environment because I had great mentors who provided me with literature that was life-changing. Being able to read, the works of brilliant thinkers that challenged my own thinking, everybody from, Malcolm X's autobiography to Plato's Republic, like reading that quality of work challenged me to look at life very differently. But then I also was extended the grace of forgiveness by the victim's family in the form of a letter that I received 5 years into my incarceration. And that letter basically made me look at life very differently. It taught me what grace is, it taught me what forgiveness is, it taught me what real love looks like from a spiritual perspective. And so the combination of those two things really had a major impact on my life. And when I was in my lowest moment, I always knew that there were books that I could turn to that would help me see my way through it.
Right. What would you advise youth who are facing adversity and at risk of becoming criminally justice involved?
So my advice to young men and women who are on a path toward, prison, juvenile detention, or are at risk for being on that path, I try to tell them to find mentors who will actually listen to them more than they talk to them. I think as adults, our tendency is to talk at children oftentimes and try to impart all the wisdom we've learned from our poor mistakes, but very rarely do we really take the time out to really listen to them and figure out what is it that they really need. And so to find a mentor like that is equivalent to finding gold, because this is somebody who's going to be able to really guide you. But also I speak to them about understanding how 30-second decisions can actually turn into lifelong consequences. And so you have to think about that. Every moment that you're living in, whatever that case may be, that moment can lead to very unhealthy outcomes. And so those are the words of wisdom that I try to share. Find a mentor and really be conscious about how your decisions can impact the rest of your life.
Talk about what your mentoring program, or what you do with mentoring wise, and relating to what I was telling you about with family reentries programs.
So the work that I've been able to do since I've been released from prison, I've started a mentoring program at 2 high schools in the Metro Detroit area called Live in Peace, and I wrote a book on it called Live in Peace: The Youth Gas Return of Hurt and Hope. And because of my work nationally now, I'm not able to run those programs, but I mentor in informal ways now. So whenever I'm back home, I go to the detention center, which is an area that I think we kind of missed the mark on a lot. We tend to think that once a juvenile is detained, that there's no reason to pour into them the wisdom and life lessons that we've learned. But I found it to be the complete opposite. I think it's really important to reach them when they're at that point in their life, because we can prevent them from ending up in prison. The work that family reentry is doing is amazing, and it's important. When you think about what it's like coming home, To come home and not have a support system or not have people believe in you makes the path toward living your life, the right way extremely hard. And it's important for us to get mentors in those spaces as well for those coming home from prison, because it's a new world. When I walked out of prison, I've been gone for 2 decades, and I came home to a very different world. And I wish I would have had a mentor in place who really understood fully what my needs would be as it pertains to getting back to society. And sadly and unfortunately, I didn't have a specific mentor, but I did have some people who had came before me who had kind of helped me see their path. So mentoring is one of the most invaluable tools we have at our disposal, and we need to actually increase those opportunities for both the mentees as well as the mentors, because as much as we need to receive, we also need to give.
What's the place for forgiveness, healing, restorative practices, and amends in the process of reentry? What might it look like?
So for me, when you think about forgiveness, you think about redemption, I personally think about what are the cornerstones of this country, and a lot of times we don't think of it from that perspective, but most of the people in this country have some type of spiritual faith or belief. Some are religious, and the cornerstones of that is redemption and second chances and extending that grace to other people. And I think as we consider what it's like for somebody to come home who wants to do the right thing, who's trying to do the right thing, and then they run into that wall where people are unwilling to forgive them for a decision they may have made, as long as far back as decades ago, I just think it's really sad and unfortunate. And so I think that we're in a time where we have an opportunity to set the standard for the rest of the world to follow when it comes to how we treat those citizens that end up in prison, end up in juvenile, who want to do the right thing when they return home. And to me, there's nothing more honorable than extending the grace of second chances to people who everybody else has given up on.